At the beginning of each school year, each teacher needs to come into the teacher portal and set up their gradebook. Now, before they can come in and do that, they need to make sure that the administrator has gone and configured the gradebook in the admin portal. Now, if you come into your teacher portal and you see that the gradebook menu isn't there, then that is your sign to go to your MMS administrator and let them know that they need to configure the gradebook in the admin portal. All right, as you can see, my gradebook has been configured in the admin portal. We are going to be covering 3 items that need to be done. The third one is optional, depending on how your school wants that last item to be handled. So we're going to be setting the averaging method for each of our classes. We're going to be setting up categories to be used for those classes. And also if, and this is the optional item, being able to configure the semester and final averaging weighting options. Not many schools allow teachers to set that, but if your school does, we will be covering that. All right, I am logged in as an elementary school teacher. And when you come into your gradebook and you click on the summary grid before you have gone in and set it up for the beginning of the school year, you're going to receive a message similar to this, saying, basically telling you that you need to set up your averaging method. And once you have your averaging method set up, you can set up the categories for those courses. So to find all of that information, we are going to go under Gradebook and Gradebook Setup. Where the first thing that needs to be done is setting the averaging method. Now this does have to be done for each of your classes, but as you can see, it will go fairly quickly. Now there are 2 options that you can select here. One is by total points, and total points basically is an unweighted term grade. So for example, if a student has a 100-point homework assignment and they receive full marks on that, so 100%, and they have a test that is also worth 100 points, and they receive full marks on that, that test and that homework assignment are equal in calculating what the student's term grade will be. The second option is by average of weighted category averages. So in that same scenario, say the teacher has 2 different categories, or at least 2 categories. One is labeled homework and the other one is labeled tests and quizzes. Tests and quizzes could be worth 50% of that student's term grade, whereas homework is only worth 10%. So that 100 mark for a homework assignment is not going to have the same weight, the same value for that term grade that a 100 for a test, for example, would have for that student. You will find, or I have found in working with different schools, that the majority of elementary schools tend to gravitate towards by total points, whereas many high schools use by average of weighted category averages. There is no right or wrong way of doing this. If you have not had a conversation yet with your school administrator, I would look to them for guidance as to what they would suggest that you use here. For this training purposes, I am going to do a combination of total points as well as weighted category averages. When we are in this operation, we are working with the class that is selected in the menu bar. And you can see that my teacher has many different classes. So we're going to do math by weighted category averages. So when you select the course and select the averaging method, you do need to save for each one. And then a message will display underneath saying that you are set up for either total points or by categories, weighted categories, excuse me. And we're going to do one more, handwriting, and that one is going to be by total points. There we go. And it's saying here that, regardless of the averaging method that we select, we are still going to need a category, at least one category set up. And I am going to reset the others and we'll be right back. All of my courses have been set for an averaging method. So I do have a combination of both total points and weighted categories. So the next thing we're going to look at is under Gradebook Setup, and we have two options for setup categories. We have this course only, and then we have multiple courses. So we are going to take a look at what this course only looks like, and then we'll see what options we have with the multiple course setup for categories. I am in my math course, and that is set up for weighted categories. Now I know that is weighted categories because I see the option of being able to put in a weight. So before you come and start adding in categories, this also might be a conversation that you have with the school administrator or your fellow teachers as to what categories make sense for to capture grades for and what their weights will be. Whether the school wants to have a policy, whether they have a policy in effect that says that tests will be a certain percentage of the term grade. So I do have categories that I have used in the past, and I think they're pretty standard. So we have a test category, and you can see I've already typed that one in before. And you have up to 5 characters for the category code. You can use a combination of letters and numbers, no special characters. And then the category name is, you have a little bit more room. So this is actually going to be my tests and quizzes. And then I can choose which marking period I want to associate this category with. Now you can have different categories from quarter to quarter, and you can also have the same categories throughout. When you are setting this up at the beginning of the school year, you are going to see all of the terms associated with that course. If it was only a semester-long course, then you would only see the terms that are associated with that particular semester. If it was a second semester course, it would be quarters 3 and 4 and so forth. In this case, I am going to add this category to all 4 quarters. And then I'm going to assign a weight. Now this is a percentage and not a relative weight. The weights do not have to total up to 100%. They cannot exceed 100%. If you try to exceed 100%, then MMS will not save your changes. So with that, and we do have a little informational button here about weighting. And it does say here that you may have different category weights in each marking period. So if you have, for example, each of your terms is going to have a test category, but earlier in the school year, the percentage that that category attributes to the term grade is, increases over the course of the school year. Alright, so I'm going to do my tests and quizzes, and I'm going to make that 40% of my final grade. And then when I have that all set, I can click on Add Category and Weights, and I will get an alert message. And the alert message will say that the category, and it will give the category name and the weight has been added to the system for each of the marking periods that you have selected to add it for. Click OK. And now here you can see just quarter one. Now when you are set up for weighted categories and you're viewing, you have to view one term at a time. And you can see there. Once a category has been added, you do have the ability to edit that category. So you can change the code, the name, the marking period, and the weight. You can update with any changes, or you can cancel out of there. If you made a mistake and added a category that you chose not to keep, you can delete it. But where you were able to add to all 4 quarters at a time, you have to go to each term, each quarter, well in my case quarters, and delete them individually. Something to keep in mind. Let's add another marking, another category while I'm here. Homework. And again, I am going to add it to all 4 terms. Homework is going to be 30%. I'm going to add. And I'm going to add one more for classwork. And I am going to add all 4 quarters again. And this time I'm going to purposely exceed the amount that I should use. Now it's really nice here, at least by when you by term that you have selected, you will see it gives you the total running weights. And all of my terms right now are the same, but I have 30 more percentage points that I can play around with. So I'm going to set this one to 35, which will exceed my 100%. And I'm going to add that. And you can see here that the total weight exceeds the marking periods, and it has all 4, and the category can't be added. So it actually wipes the slate clean, so I'm going to have to add that in again. And this time I will use the appropriate percentage. And now I have 100%. Now I can go and maybe go to quarter 4. So I'm looking at my quarter 4 categories, and maybe I want to, change the weighting on this and possibly add a new category just for quarter 4 if they have a project that's going to count for, part of the 4th quarter average. Let's see. So let's do that. So before we do that, we need to actually change the weight, and we're going to add that to just quarter 4. And this time we're going to use a weight of 0. Now there are some times when having a category with the weight of 0 is desirable. You can use a weighted category of 0 for when you are giving assignments or tests to see where the students are with their knowledge of a new topic that you'll be covering. So we are going to add that, but then we're going to play around with editing the weights. So before I can bump up my project, I need to change some weights here. So I'm going to change the weight of my homework from 30 to 20. And likewise with my, oh, I didn't save my changes. I click cancel. So I'm going to update that. And we're going to update this one instead of just cancel out of it. And now I can change this to 20%. All right, so now I'm going to go to a class that is set to be for total points to see how this looks. I think that one's set to total points. There we go. So it looks very similar. So we can add categories. And again, you can use just one category or you can use multiple categories. Now, the categories won't be weighted because we're just using total points. But what would be the advantage of using categories, multiple categories, when you are not weighting them? Well, there are some options that when you are producing the progress reports, you have the option of setting those up so that they will show the category averages. Even though they're not weighted, you can have a homework category, a classwork category, and a test category, or whichever categories work for you. And then on those progress reports, it will display the average of the students' assignments that are associated with those different categories. So if they are, they have an A average in tests, but a D average in homework, that's kind of a red flag for the student, the teacher, and the parents that something is wrong with their homework, that they are either not turning it in or having struggles with, doing that homework. That is an example of where having categories for an unweighted course would be beneficial. So I'm going to set up the same categories. And again, you can have different categories for different quarters. You don't have to do like I'm doing and adding them all to all quarters. And you can see here that this very similar message is just lacking the weighting because it's not weighted. The nice part about this is that you can see all of your categories across all of the terms rather than having that drop-down list and only seeing one term at a time for the weighted class. And I'll just add one more. It's kind of nice that it remembers what you've typed in before. And we're going to add that. So this is sorted by term, so I can see the two categories that I have for quarter one. All right, so now let's take a look at the setup categories for multiple courses. Now this would apply to either, regardless of whether you're an elementary or a high school teacher. If you are using the same categories across all of your courses, whether they're a language arts or a math class, that is fine. But it gives you the ability to add categories for multiple courses across multiple terms. Now, just remember the warning that I gave you when we came to the setup categories for a single course. If you make an error in your category or you change your mind, this kind of magnifies the undo factor because you're going to have to go back to the multiple categories, the setup category for this course only, and then go term by term and either edit or delete. This operation here will only allow you to add. Now I have added some for my handwriting class and I can't see what I've added so far. If I were to change to my math class that I added earlier, I can't see where my total is. The only way you can see what you have for categories that you have set up is to go by this category only. Use this with caution, but it is a huge time saver. My math class is already set to 100%. It's fully weighted, so I can't use this class. So let's change to my English. Again, I'm going to add my category in. I can select all or one term. The weighting is the same, so we're going to use 40% again. And what we can see here are all the other classes, the courses that this teacher has that uses the same weighting as the class that I have here in my English. So this is my English English Section 1, and we have a reading and we have a spelling. Now the reason why we're able to check on these classes is that they are also set to weighted categories. My handwriting and my religion are set to non-weighted, so I cannot add to them. I'm clicking and nothing is happening. That one is already set. Although let's see, that'll be an interesting message because it will add this test category to my reading, my spelling, and my English, but it will not to math because math is already at 100% for its weighted categories. So let's see what this does and the message we get. So for quarter one math, so our new category could not be added to the following courses because the marking period with that code is not set up for the course's grade plan, or because it caused the weights to exceed 100%. So let's verify that. So it did add to the courses that it could. So let's do a different example and we'll ignore our math class because it is all set up. So we'll add the homework category and we'll give that a 30%. And we are going to add it to all four terms. We are going to ignore our math and we're going to select those. And now we're going to add. And so when it does add, the informational message is limited to only when a problem occurs. The ones that I had selected are fine. And as I said before, the only way that you can see when you're using the setup categories by multiple courses, the only way you can see what you have set up and what the total weights are is by going to the single course only, this course only view. And you can see that we're set up for 70%. So I'm going to go back to my handwriting and we're going to take a look at the setup categories for multiple courses for total points. So I have my handwriting selected here, and again we enter in the category code. So let's put a project category and we're going to put that for quarter 2 and quarter 4, and we are going to select just these two. You can see here that my math, my English, my reading, and my spelling are all weighted, and because they are set up differently, I cannot select those. And we'll add that. So we just get the alert message that the new category has been added. And to review what we have set up so far, and there's our project for quarter 2 and quarter 4. Now to see the last option under Gradebook Setup, I need to go to log in as a different teacher. Now I've logged in as my high school teacher and he has been given an additional option. So if I go under Gradebook and Gradebook Setup, I'm going to see Configure Averaging. Now configure averaging will apply when you have, say, for example, a semester average, whether it's first semester, second semester, or a final average that is a grade bin associated with the grade plan of the course that you have selected. And in the setup for Gradebook in the admin portal, the teachers are given permission to modify the averaging method for those calculated grades. So the semester average, the final average. You will do this for each course. So I have my geometry course here and I am going to select my marking period. Now this marking period needs to be set in the admin portal as a final grade entry only. So which means it's going to be averaged. And in selecting that, I see here that alert message says that no previously saved weights to recall for the marking period FAV, which is final average. So it's going to load the default weights that the administrator entered in when setting up the gradebook for the current school year in the admin portal. So it could be that this, for this school, maybe that the mid-year exam and final exam was optional, that, not all teachers had to have a separate standalone grade for that. So in this case, I am going to remove that 0.25. Now, this is different than the weighted categories. These are, and there is an explanation right here that this is a weight that is associated. So you can see here that my quarter grades all have a weight of 1. So whatever the quarters average out to, they will contribute to the final average equally. And the mid-year exam and the final exam were worth 1/4 weight as compared to the quarter averages. So I am changing those so that the final exam and the mid-year exam will not contribute to the final average. And after you make those changes, you save the rules. If I leave this, like go to my summary grid and then come back to that option here, when I select that marking period, it's no longer going to load the defaults that were entered into the admin portal. It is going to load what I have just saved. And that is all that is needed for setting up the gradebook at the beginning of the school year.